Yes, I like healthy bodies, because if you really get the full understanding of it and you really go into it a little bit, it really equips us to have a good observation of your clients. When you walk into the room and they don't feel well, you sort of can put the puzzle together of maybe what's wrong, and that's like half the battle won, because it equips you in how to deal with them, what to do, who to call, you know. So that's why I like it. I probably should have been a doctor. I like diagnosing people, and then I go, it's not your place to diagnose. So yeah, so we're talking about healthy bodies, and yeah, it really is at the core of our you know, our trade really is at the core of the human body that we are dealing with. And yes, we're looking at the physical human body, but there's a lot of the holistic overview of the body that we do consider also through the unit anyways, because for it to be a healthy body, you need to consider other aspects that are probably not as physical as the, you know, all the different body systems, or you know what we are talking about. This slide has a lot of videos in, because I'm not able to you know, draw pictures as well as what they can on the slides, and I'm not as good as, you know, making it as visual, and I'm a visual learner. So for me to understand how the lung works, I have to see the picture. And I have to see sort of a movie to see how it fits all together. And it's very helpful for me. You might be able to just read something and, you know, and process through it. For me, it's easier if I can see the picture. And I think we all learn different ways. So, and it like sort of helps, every little bit helps to make it a little bit of a clearer picture. So this is information about the human body, and correct use of interpretation of health terminology, and describes the normal structure, function, and the location of the body systems. On my walls, I have more than 11 systems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got this 12 here. There's actually just really 11. I think the productive system is 1. That's what makes it 1 more. But the 11 systems is on the wall. So it might make a little bit more sense now after watching this slide, what it's all about. So there's the 11 systems. If we look on the wall, it will probably be a little bit clearer to see. We've got the skeleton system. That's obviously, you know, the bones, the urinary system, which is your kidneys and bladder and stuff, the reproductive system and male and female, the endocrine system, that is all our glands, our nervous system, what is on that one there, the skin, the integumentary system, the lymphatic system, the digestive system, muscular system, vascular system, which is a part actually of your respiratory system, your vascular and your, vascular system is your heart, respiratory system is our lungs. All of these systems work together. So we are going to start off by watching a little video on the vascular system.
Your heart is a pump. It's a muscular organ about the size of your fist and is located slightly left of center in your chest. Your heart is divided into the right and left side. The division protects oxygen-rich blood from mixing with oxygen-poor blood. Together, your heart and blood vessels comprise your cardiovascular system, which circulates blood and oxygen around your body. In fact, your heart pumps about 5 quarts of blood every minute, and it beats about 100,000 times in one day. That's about 35 million times in a year. Oxygen-poor blood, blue blood, returns to the heart after circulating through your body. The right side of the heart, composed of the right atrium and ventricle, collects and pumps the blood to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. The lungs refresh the blood with a new supply of oxygen, making it turn red. Oxygen-rich blood, red blood, then enters the left side of the heart, composed of the left atrium and ventricle, and is pumped through the aorta to the body to supply tissues with oxygen. 4 valves within your heart keep your blood moving the right way. The tricuspid, mitral, pulmonary, and aortic valves work like gates on a fence. They open only one way and only when pushed on. Each valve opens and closes once per heartbeat, or about once every second. A beating heart contracts and relaxes. Contraction is called systole, and relaxing is called diastole. During systole, your ventricles contract, forcing blood into the vessels going to your lungs and body, much like ketchup being forced out of a squeeze bottle. The right ventricle contracts a little bit before the left ventricle does. Your ventricles then relax during diastole and are filled with blood coming from the upper chambers, the left and right atria. Then the cycle starts over again. Your heart is nourished by blood too. Blood vessels called coronary arteries extend over the surface of your heart and branch into smaller capillaries. Here you can see just a network of blood vessels that feed your heart with oxygen-rich blood. Your heart also has electrical wiring, which keeps it beating. Electrical impulses begin high in the right atrium and travel through specialized pathways to the ventricles, delivering the signal to pump. The conduction system keeps your heart beating in a coordinated and normal rhythm, which in turn keeps blood circulating. The continuous exchange of oxygen-rich blood with oxygen-poor blood is what keeps you alive.
Okay, so that's the cardiovascular system. And I think you have one of your pictures, you have to fill in all the names of the cardiovascular system. You can just, do that in your own time, really thinking about, the cardiovascular system. I think one of the questions we will discuss a bit later as well, just talking about which arteries takes the blood in and which ones takes the blood away. And the cardiovascular system obviously supply our blood right through our body. Talking about blood pressure, some companies, I don't know about normality, to check it, sometimes we do, they do expect us to learn how to do blood pressure. We were taught how to do blood pressure when we were in the 80s. At some stage it became more the Ian and the orange job, but they don't always have the time, so sometimes they will ask you to do the monthly ops, as they call it, which is like taking the blood pressure, temperature, and things like that. It's important part because it indicates if there's any problems with your heart, and it will also indicate if you are dehydrated. You can see that in your blood pressure. And there's all sorts of diseases that are linked with a blood pressure. So the doctors can make interpretation of what possibly could be wrong. So I think I've got another video just talking about blood pressure. There's a lot of videos in this.
This video will help you understand how blood pressure is controlled in your body. Blood pressure is the amount of force caused by blood pressing against the walls of your arteries. It is tightly controlled to ensure sufficient blood reaches all parts of your body. Arteries are blood vessels that carry blood away from your heart to your tissues. This blood supplies your tissues with the oxygen and nutrients they need to function. In your heart, there are 2 lower chambers called ventricles, which contract with each heartbeat. The right ventricle pushes oxygen-poor blood to your lungs to pick up oxygen, and the left ventricle pushes oxygen-rich blood through your arteries to your body. As blood flows through your arteries, Four main factors affect the pressure on the artery walls. The first is the amount of blood your ventricles push out of your heart each minute, also known as cardiac output. Your blood pressure goes up as cardiac output increases. The second factor affecting your blood pressure is the total amount of blood in your body, or blood volume. Blood pressure also goes up as blood volume increases. The third factor that affects your blood pressure is resistance. Resistance is anything working against the blood flow through your arteries. Resistance is mainly affected by the width of your arteries. Your body is able to increase the width of your arteries to lower your blood pressure. Or it can reduce the width to raise your blood pressure. The fourth factor that affects your blood pressure is viscosity. Viscosity is how thick your blood is. In your blood, more particles, such as proteins and fat, increase viscosity. If your blood is thicker, your blood pressure goes up as your heart works harder to push it through your arteries. If you have questions about high blood pressure or any medications you have been prescribed, speak with your doctor. It is important to take your medications as directed and report any side effects you have.
All right, that gives us a tiny bit of an idea, why, how to measure the blood pressure. So it's written, your diastolic, so the pressure on the diastolic pressure over your systolic pressure falls a little bit. So it's not as dangerous. It's actually less, it's actually less dangerous, but it also is an indicator of dehydration. So people that tend to be dehydrated are people that with low blood pressure. So you need to drink more water. And it can be dangerous because you can damage your kidneys and stuff if you have long-term dehydration. That's what my mom basically died from, is damaging her kidneys because she didn't drink enough water. And then obviously then that can be seen in your blood pressure, low blood pressure. Your blood pressure falls in dangerously low. Yeah, it can be really.
But it makes you faint.
Yes, when you stand up, you feel giddy and stuff.
Oh, it took me down on the back.
Yeah, can do. And if you look after an old person and their blood pressure is really low, you have to report it also. Don't think it's not dangerous. It's actually a real indicator that they probably are not drinking enough, and it's that added worry that, obviously they can fall. And if they fall, it's not pretty. It's in tears and bump heads and, it's hospital stories, breaking hips. My friend's in the hospital, she had a knee replacement 2 days ago, and she's in the ward with an old lady that had a fall and broken her ankle. So not easy. Not easy when you're at that age. You break bones very easily as well, because we get brittle bones, and so we lose the density in our bones. So we have to watch especially our clients and stuff, if they tend to fall, and watch them so that, yeah. Did you fall? Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So I've got another video. This one's full of videos. You're watching today.
Your clinical setting protocol. Obtain consent from the patient for the assessment and explain the procedure. Ensure that the patient
factor in the last 30 minutes. The patient should be allowed to rest for 5 minutes following the activity. Prepare the environment by making the room quiet, ensure patient privacy, and equipment is clean and intact. Blood pressure is measured indirectly with a stethoscope or Doppler and a sphygmomanometer. The sphygmomanometer includes the blood pressure cuff, connection tube, air pump, and manometer. Blood pressure cuffs come in several sizes, and the size of the cuff bladder should be 80% of the circumference of the limb being assessed. Finally, perform hand hygiene before you start. 2. Choose the measurement site. The preferred site is the brachial pulse site, where the brachial artery runs across the antecubital fossa. Another site is the posterior side, where the popliteal artery runs behind the knee joint. The site should be free from pain, injury, surgical incisions, intravenous cannulas, central venous or arterial lines, areas with poor perfusion, AV fistulas, and AV shunts. This reduces the risk of patient harm and helps ensure result accuracy. 3. Position the patient either sitting, standing, supine, or prone, depending on your choice of measurement site. If sitting, their feet should be flat on the floor. The limb should be fully exposed so the cuff can be correctly applied. Do not apply the cuff over clothing. If using the arm, patients should be supported so that the midpoint of the upper arm is level with the heart, with the elbow extended and the palm facing upwards. Then palpate the brachial artery to identify location and apply the cuff directly over the brachial artery. There is usually an arrow to indicate the center of the cuff, which should be directly above the brachial artery. Wrap the fully deflated cuff snugly, about 2.5 centimeters above the antecubital fossa, and secure. If using the leg, position the leg so that it is at an equal level to the palm. Then wrap the cuff around the thigh with the bottom of the cuff slightly above the knee. The popliteal artery will be used for blood pressure measurement. This is easier if the patient is in a prone position. Please note that the systolic blood pressure in the popliteal artery is usually 20 to 30 millimeters of mercury higher than in the brachial artery. 4. Palpate the artery to determine the systolic blood pressure. This ensures that the auscultatory gap does not interfere with the accurate reading of the blood pressure. Inflate the blood pressure cuff and note when the pulsation is no longer positive. Release the cuff and wait 1 to 2 minutes. 5. Position the stethoscope over the brachial artery and use the valve side of the stethoscope. If the Doppler is being used instead, apply conducting gel to the site where the pulse distal to the blood pressure cuff was palpated. 6. Auscultate the blood pressure. Pump up to 30 millimeters of mercury above the palpated systolic blood pressure. Slowly release the pressure so that it falls by 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury per second. Note the manometer readings at drop-off phases 1, 4, and 5. Continue to listen for another 30 millimeters of mercury after it's gone silent. Now deflate the cuff rapidly. 7. If a repeat blood pressure measurement is necessary, wait 2 minutes before inflating the cuff again. 8. If required for your assessment, repeat the procedure on the other arm or in a standing position to gain a postural blood pressure measurement. 9. Remove the cuff. 10. Advise the patient of the result. 11. Clean and return the equipment. 12. Document. Results and documentation. Blood pressure is recorded as a fraction, with the top number representing the systole and the bottom number representing the diastole. The first and second diastolic are recorded. The first diastolic is written over the second. For example, 120 over 90 over 80. Documentation post the assessment is essential and should include the location the BP was taken and any factors that may have impacted the result. Further, it is important that health professionals note that any drastic changes in blood pressure can be a sign of clinical deterioration. bladder cuff too narrow or wide, limb being assessed is unsupported, insufficient rest before the assessment, repeating the assessment too quickly, cuff not wrapped tightly and evenly, deflating the cuff too quickly, deflating the cuff too slowly, failure to use the same site for consistency of results. Limb being assessed is measured while above their heart level.
I saw another mistake there we make is turn the bell from the stethoscope the other way around.
Yeah.
Oh man, and it's almost impossible to hear when and a lot of them use it the wrong way. You won't believe how many people use that bell the wrong way. So you need to turn it the other way around. Yeah, it's a big mistake we make, because then you're guessing, and you can see it. You can see when as the needle goes down, you can see where it starts jumping, and then where it jumps, and when it stops jumping and it just goes down, you can actually see it on the measurement. But we used to have it with lead, so it was a long one that stood up like that, and it had lead in, and then it would come up, and you can see the lead popping and coming down. Yeah, but a lot of homes now have automatic ones. You just connect them on, and it comes on the screen, and it's done automatically. But still, there you have to remember to take the sleeve up or pull the sleeve off. Have the pipes from the blood pressure measurement, in line with your artery. So when you wrap it around, it has to be in line with the artery. Having the right type of cuff on is also quite essential. Especially if you get the oldies, some of them are so skinny and tiny. We've used some children's cuffs for them because they're so little. Their arms are so little. If you have these huge big cuffs, you wrap around it 3-4 times, it just doesn't give you the correct measurement. So yeah, so those are things to keep in mind. Okay, so that is the cardiovascular system, and that's one of the measurements we do with the cardiovascular system, which is our heart. If anyone ever complains of pain in the heart, that is straight 000. No waiting, no calling, no hesitating, nothing. You call 000, you call your supervisor. Obviously, if you're in the older chunk, you'll call the EN or the RN, and they will call 000. Yeah, don't play with that. I have a friend, her husband complained of a pain in his heart. He was 42 years old, and he died before the ambulance got there. So, heart attack can take somebody instantly. So, it's really, you'll see also how people react. If somebody complains of a pain in the chest, you'll see how the RNs react. They just call 000 straight away, and the ambulance will come with lights on. So, and then when you do your first aid, you will learn how to use the defibrillator, that if somebody's heart did stop, how to restart their heart. We will generally never really get the opportunity to do that unless you are in the coals and somebody falls in this, and there's no doctor around, nobody there, and they're having a heart attack. We might use the defibrillator, but otherwise, in the care home, you generally, we don't even have a defibrillator in the Shepherd, which is really odd. Really odd, yeah, we don't. We just do manual resuscitation, and then we'll sit on them until the ambulance comes. Okay, so the next system we're talking about is the respiratory system, which is our lungs. We've got another little video.
Respiratory system. To understand the process of breathing, in humans, the main organs responsible for respiration are present in the thoracic cavity. In the thorax region, the rib cage and a dome-shaped fibrous tissue, known as the diaphragm, are observed. Present within the rib cage are the pleural membranes, which enclose the lungs. The right lung is divided into 3 lobes: the right superior, right middle, and the right inferior lobe. The left lung is smaller and has only 2 lobes, the left superior and the left inferior lobe. Both the lungs are associated externally with small tubular bronchi, which unite and extend into the trachea. The trachea has incomplete C-shaped rings of cartilage, which prevent the tracheal wall from collapsing. The trachea leads into the pharynx, which is connected to the nostrils. As we breathe in air, the oxygen molecules enter the nostrils and travel downwards through the pharynx and trachea to finally reach the bronchi. From each bronchus, oxygen travels into the lungs. Within the lungs, the bronchus divides repeatedly to form bronchioles. Oxygen travels through these bronchioles and reaches the alveoli, each of which is surrounded by a network of capillaries. A section of one alveolus shows the presence of numerous alveolar chambers with pores. Blood, containing RBCs, is seen flowing through the capillaries. The oxygen molecules from the alveolus diffuse into the capillary and then get absorbed by the bluish-purple RBCs. This causes oxygenation of the RBCs, and a transition in their color from bluish-purple to red is observed. The blood moving into the alveolus contains RBCs and carbon dioxide molecules. These molecules are released into the alveolus. The carbon dioxide collects in the alveolar chamber. And then from the alveolus, it travels through the bronchioles into the bronchus, which finally reaches the trachea and is breathed out through the nostrils. So the process of breathing in air rich in oxygen is called inhalation. After the contraction of the muscular diaphragm, the lungs expand and the air rushes in, resulting in the inflation of the alveoli. During exhalation, the diaphragm moves up and the lungs contract. Thus, the alveoli deflate, causing the air to be forced out. This exhaled air is rich in carbon dioxide. This process of inhalation and exhalation is known as respiration, which is approximately 20 times per minute. Summary. In the thorax region, the rib cage and the diaphragm are observed, which play a vital role in respiration. Present within the rib cage are the pleural membranes, which enclose the lungs. The right lung consists of 3 lobes, while the left lung has only 2 lobes. Both the lungs are associated externally with bronchi, which unite and extend into the trachea. As we breathe, the oxygen molecules enter the nostrils and travel downwards through the pharynx and trachea to finally reach the bronchi. From each bronchus, oxygen travels into the lungs. Within the lungs, the bronchus divides repeatedly to form bronchioles. Oxygen travels through these bronchioles and reaches the alveoli, each of which is surrounded by a network of capillaries. As blood flows through the capillaries, the oxygen molecules from the alveolus diffuse into the capillary. This causes oxygenation of the RBCs. The carbon dioxide molecules are released into the alveolus. They are collected in the alveolar chamber, and then from the alveolus, it travels through the bronchioles. Into the bronchus, which finally reaches the trachea and is breathed out through the nostrils.
Okay, so that's the lungs. So I like that little video. It's a nice little video. Remember there when the 20 breaths per second, per minute. So one of the other daily ops or monthly ops or weekly ops you might be taking with the resident or client would be their breaths, how many breaths they take per minute, and that would be 20 per minute. So you watch them, don't tell them you're watching their breath, so pretend as if you're taking their pulse, and then you watch while their chest rise and fall, and you count that. It's another important measurement. So it should be 20. If it's less than 20 or more than 20, it's also an indication that there's maybe something wrong with their lungs. They might have lung infection or something like that. Then obviously the other measurement we would be taking is the level of oxygen in somebody's blood. That's normally just a tiny little thing that you put on their finger. That generally should be about 92. I forget what the measurement's taking. Liters per whatever that it's taken by. If it's any less than that, it's hospital stories, you know, that's serious. It's a very good little piece of equipment to actually invest in for yourself, because especially now with a coronavirus, it's one thing that will indicate that you have an issue with your lungs very quickly. And a very small indicator without having to take a measurement, temperature, or wondering whether, you know, you have lack of oxygen or not. So that's the lungs. And then obviously we see there when the lungs now are oxygenating the blood, and that blood goes through to the heart. Where the heart, you know, we have the blue blood going out of the heart, going through the lungs, picking up oxygen, going then through the body back or through the heart, you know, feeding the heart with oxygen. So you can see how the heart and your lungs work together, and they can't be separated from each other. All systems depend on each other. You can't run the body when one system is not working properly. So that's the main idea main concept to understand from healthy bodies, is that all body systems run together. They all work together. So the next system we are looking at is the skeleton system.
The musculoskeletal system consists of the muscular and skeletal system, and together these give us the ability to move. The skeletal system provides support to the body and allows movement, as well as creating structures that protect soft tissue organs. For example, the rib cage protects the heart and lungs. The bones of the skeleton come together at places known as joints. There are different types of joints, each providing a different level of mobility. Sutures, for example, are non-movable joints between the bones of the skull, and they provide no mobility. Other joints, however, such as the ball and socket joints found in the hips and shoulders, provide lots of mobility, as these bones can rotate in multiple planes. Hinge joints, such as those in the knee and elbow, can bend in one plane but not rotate. And pivot joints, such as those found in the neck, allow rotation but in a limited plane. The bones that are movable joints are held together by a type of connective tissue known as ligaments. Other types of connective tissues involved in the skeletal system are tendons, responsible for attaching muscle to bone, and cartilage, which provides cushioning at many joints. The muscular system consists of 3 types of muscle tissue: smooth, cardiac, and skeletal muscle. The skeletal muscles are connected to bone via tendons, as it has several functions. They aid in the voluntary movement of the skeletal system. They provide joint stabilization, protect organs, and maintain posture. Cardiac muscles form the structure of the heart and allow the heart to contract and thus pump blood through the body. Smooth muscles line the vessels of the circulatory system and organs of the digestive system. So how exactly do skeletal muscles contract, resulting in the movement of bones? Well, skeletal muscle fibers contain thick filaments of myosin alternating with thin filaments of actin. A nerve signal to the muscle causes calcium ions to be released. These ions bind to a protein associated with the actin filament, exposing the active sites. Part of the myosin structure can now interact with the active site of actin, thus pulling the actin filament positive, which results in the contraction of the muscle. As the muscle shortens, it pulls on the tendons, which pulls on the bone. This process occurs repeatedly until the nervous signal stops. Muscles can only pull on bone, they cannot push, and so in order for the bone to move back the other way, a different muscle must contract while the original muscle relaxes.
Okay, that was the muscular system. Did you guys want to take a small break? At 10 o'clock. Yeah, okay. I might just pause this recording. All right, so that is the skeleton. I don't think the skeleton is actually in our book anywhere as clear as this. So if you want to just copy it from here, it might be an idea. Just on top is just the skull. It's somewhere, but it's not as clear as this. Then the 7 cervical vertebrae, the 12 thoracic vertebrae, the 5 lumbar vertebrae, the sacrum, and the coccyx. I've been trying to email people the PowerPoint, but my server won't allow the PowerPoints that too big, so it won't allow me to email the PowerPoint. So otherwise I can send you the PowerPoints and you can just go back to the actual little videos if you want. You don't have to watch the whole thing. But unfortunately the server, coccyx, COCCYX. All right, the next system we are looking at is the endocrine system.
Where's those forms? Because I like to pick up grade when we're going to do the assignment every time.
Which forms are you talking about?
I picked up 3 copies.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're looking at the next body system. That's the endocrine system.
The endocrine system is one of the 2 systems that are responsible for communication and integration between various body tissues, the other being the nervous system. Endocrine communication is achieved by means of chemical messengers called hormones. Hormones are produced in endocrine glands and secreted into the bloodstream to reach body tissue. The hormone can travel wherever the blood goes, but it can only affect cells that have receptors for it. These are called target cells. There are 2 major types of hormones. Steroid hormones derived from cholesterol and are lipid soluble, and non-steroid hormones derived from peptides or amino acids and are water soluble. Lipid soluble steroid hormones can cross the cell membrane to bind to the receptors inside the cell, either in the cytoplasm or nucleus. Steroid hormone receptors are typically transcription factors. Upon forming, the hormone hormone receptor complex binds to specific DNA sequences to regulate gene expression, and thus mediating cellular response. On the other hand, water-soluble non-steroid hormones are unable to cross the lipid membrane and therefore must bind to receptors located on the surface of the cell. The binding triggers a cascade of events that leads to production of CAMP, a second messenger that is responsible for cellular response to hormones. It does so by changing enzyme activity or ion channel permeability. Major endocrine glands include the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, pineal gland, thyroid and parathyroid glands, thymus, adrenal glands, islets of the pancreas, and testes in men or ovaries in women. The endocrine system also includes hormone-secreting cells from other organs, such as kidneys and intestines. Except for the hypothalamus and the pituitary, different endocrine glands are involved in different, more or less independent processes. For example, the pancreas produces insulin and glucagon that keep blood sugar levels in check. The parathyroid glands produce hormones that regulate calcium and phosphorus. Thyroid hormones control metabolic rate, while the ovaries and testes are involved in reproductive function. On the other hand, the hypothalamus and pituitary glands play a more central, integrated role. The hypothalamus is also part of the brain. It secretes several hormones called neurohormones, which control the production of other hormones by the pituitary. Thus, the hypothalamus links the nervous system to the endocrine system. The pituitary is known as the master gland because it controls the functions of many other endocrine glands. A major role of the endocrine system is to maintain the body's stable internal conditions, or homeostasis, such as blood sugar levels or serum calcium levels. To do this, it utilizes negative feedback mechanisms, which work very much like a thermostat. The heater is on when the temperature is low, off when it's high. For example, when blood glucose level is high, such as after a meal, glucose induces insulin release from the pancreas. Insulin helps body cells consume glucose, clearing it from the blood. Low blood glucose can no longer act on the pancreas, which now stops releasing insulin. Another example is the regulation of thyroid hormone levels, which are induced by a pituitary hormone called thyroid-stimulating hormone, TSH. TSH, in turn, is under control of thyrotropin-releasing hormone, TRH, from the hypothalamus. When thyroid hormone levels are too high, they suppress the secretion of TSH and TRH, consequently inhibiting their own production. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, be sure to check out our new Patreon page. Patreon is a simple way for you to contribute to our production and get great rewards.
Okay, that's a bit of a mouthful, and some of it you might want to watch again. It's this is, I think, essential to take from this that obviously a hormone production and release of hormones plays a huge role in things like cancers and motor neuron diseases, any diseases to do with multiple sclerosis. All sorts of diseases are affected by some hormone production and can, like, play a role. So, yeah, and obviously we talk about life stages. Hormone production has got, to do with making babies, and if you work with teenagers, and and all these type of things, so and it also, again, it works together with hormone production, works together with moods, it works together with your sensory, it works together with your heart, and your nervous system, your central nervous system, and none of it sits by themselves. If you have problems with your thyroid glands, or that will fluctuate in weight, seem to have problems with that. People with brain tumors on the pituitary gland that affects, you know, getting pregnant and issues like that. Yeah, so knowing life stages, knowing how this works together. Obviously, it works together with the reproductive system. If you have somebody that's had cancer and one of their lymph nodes has been taken out underneath their arm, don't take the blood pressure on that side. You know, and that, because remember when we were talking about the blood pressure, taking blood pressure, don't take it on the side where there's been an operation on the side of your body. The nervous system is our next system.
Every action and thought that we have happens because of our nervous system. Without it, we wouldn't be what we are, an incredibly complex and intelligent organism. But how does it work? Let's explore what we know about the nervous system. To put it simply, the nervous system is the part of an animal's body that takes and coordinates action. All animals have a nervous system, except super simple ones like sea sponges. The nervous system is composed of two major parts: the central nervous system located in the brain and in the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system located all over the rest of the body. The central nervous system is like the mission control center of the body. It analyzes things and decides what to do. It then sends a signal to the peripheral nervous system, who takes action by stimulating the appropriate muscle part. This motor division of the peripheral nervous system can either be somatic, like the contraction of a leg, or autonomic, like the contraction of the arm. In parallel, the sensory division of the peripheral nervous system detects stimuli with the help of sensory neurons that send signals to the central nervous system, which then decides whether or not an action should be taken. If the stimuli indicate that the body is in danger, for instance, a hand on a hot stove, the signal only passes through the spinal cord and is immediately sent to the muscle. These reflexes happen in a fraction of a second. However, if the body is in danger, the signal passes through the spinal cord and goes to the brain, which eventually decides what to do. But what is the nervous system made of? It is composed of nervous tissues. They contain neurons that transmit messages and nerve cells that support and protect neurons. There are 5 types of sensory neurons: thermoreceptors, which react to changes in temperature; photoreceptors, which react to light; chemoreceptors, which react to chemicals; mechanoreceptors, which react to pressure, touch, and vibration; and finally nociceptors, which indicate pain. Nociceptors are special neurons that only fire up when a certain amount of pain is detected. However, when cells are damaged, they release chemicals that lower the pain pressure. This prevents the body from activating the injury. But due to a rare genetic disease, some people can't feel pain. Although it might seem nice to feel no pain, this condition is actually very dangerous because serious injuries can easily cause. But how do neurons transmit messages? They first receive an electrical stimuli other than gas. Then, this signal travels the axon before going to the axon terminal. Finally, it travels a synapse, the junction between two neurons, and arrives at the dendrite of another neuron. This processes the nucleus like millions of interconnected neurons until the signal reaches its destination. However, there are 2 types of synapses. Electrical synapses transmit the electrical impulse without changing it. This process is fast, but it precise. This is why it is used in the peripheral nervous system to accomplish autonomic actions. On the other hand, chemical synapses can amplify or modify the electrical impulse, which allows more complex messages to be transmitted. Although this process is slower, it is more precise. This is why it is used in the central nervous system and in central parts of the peripheral nervous system. Thus, when a signal travels the axon, special molecules called neurotransmitters are released. They then temporarily bind to receptors of the receiving neuron, which creates an electrical impulse. After a certain time, the neurotransmitters released from the receptors. Part of them are chemically destroyed by enzymes, while others return to the initial neuron and are recycled. Each type of neurotransmitter has a specific function, but there are 2 major kinds of neurotransmitters in bodies: excited or reborn stimulate neurons, while inhibited neurons calm them. As of today, about 50 different neurotransmitters have been identified in humans. They are the main ones. Epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine, also known as noradrenaline, are both released during moments of high stress. They are part of the fight or flight response, which gives the body the energy it needs to get fight the danger. Adrenaline opens the lungs and increases the blood flow, which gives extra energy to the muscles, while norepinephrine increases the alertness and concentration. As to glutamine, it is constantly released in the brain. It plays an important role in the development of neural pathways, which are responsible for learning and memory. Acetylcholine is present all over the body. It not only triggers muscle contraction and stress, but it is also believed to play a role in memory and attention. Endorphins are a class of neurotransmitters that are released during physical exercise, sex, or when the body is seriously injured. They create a feeling of euphoria and immune system. Although serotonin is constantly present in the brain, physical exercise increases the release of this neurotransmitter. Serotonin plays an important role in the digestion of food and the regulation of sleep cycles, along with melatonin. It also makes us happy as it creates a general feeling of well-being. Gamma-aminobutyric acid is a neurotransmitter that is constantly released in the brain. It calms excited neurons and inhibits the release of neurotransmitters, which relaxes the body and helps the symptoms of illness. Dopamine is a special neurotransmitter that is considered to be both excitatory and inhibitory. It is released during activities essential for survival mechanisms, such as eating or having sex, and it creates an intense feeling of pleasure and satisfaction. It is also believed to play a role in motivation and attention. So the nervous system is an essential part of our body. It is incredibly complex, and a lot about it is yet to be understood.
You can clearly see how your endocrine system and your nervous system works very closely together. All those things those neurotransmitters are all actually originated, created in your glands and your endocrine system. Okay, so that's the brain, which is the like the driving body of the central nervous system, where all the messages go and come from. It is in your book as well, so you struggle to copy it from there. There is another picture of the brain, frontal lobe. It's also, obviously for us important to know, working with people with dementia, which area of the brain is affected by dementia, and then when you understand which area of the brain has been affected and when those messages doesn't go through anymore, like if their language is affected and they can't speak properly anymore, or their balance gets affected because of the central nervous system, because of the brain being affected by dementia. Can you see that bar? I think there's a good picture in the book anyway, so that one. Yeah, I think that one is in the book somewhere. Yeah. Which page is that one?
31.
Page 31. But we'll go through the pages in a minute. So the integumentary system, which is the skin. So some of these videos, I try to choose short ones, so some of them have a bit of an accent on them and it's a bit harder to understand.
In this video, we're going to go over the makeup or structure of skin. Human skin, which is also called the integument or the cutaneous membrane, is made up of two layers, the epidermis and the dermis, which are labeled on the smile of skin. The subcutaneous layer at the bottom has also been labeled. However, it is not actually part of the structure of skin, but it's connected to the dermis of the skin. I will also be drawing in some components that are not actually on this model. Let's start by looking at the epidermis. The epidermis consists of 4 to 5 layers, depending on the type of skin. Thick skin has 5 layers, and it is found in the palms of the hands and on the soles of the feet. Thin skin has 4 layers, and is what covers most of the body.
The skin model we're looking at has all 5 layers. The bottom or deep layer is called the stratum basal. It is made up of a single layer of cells attached to a basement membrane. There are 3 types of cells in the stratum basal: keratinocytes, melanocytes, and tactile cells. Keratinocytes are the most common cell in this layer, and they go through cell division to replace cells that are shed from the surface of the skin. These cells can produce a tough structural protein called keratin, which strengthens the skin and makes it almost waterproof. Melanocytes are scattered among the keratinocytes, and they produce the pigment melanin in reaction to exposure to ultraviolet light. Melanin gets transferred to keratinocytes and surrounds the nucleus to protect DNA from mutating from ultraviolet radiation. Tactile cells are also scattered among the keratinocytes, and they serve as light touch receptors. The next layer, moving upwards in the epidermis, is the stratum spinosum. This layer is made up of daughter keratinocytes made from dividing cells in the stratum basal layer below and epidermal dendritic cells. The daughter keratinocytes connect to neighboring cells' desmosomes, which are one of the ways cells connect to one another, giving them a prickly appearance. The dendritic cells are immune cells that help fight infections in the skin. Moving upwards, the next layer is the stratum granulosum. This layer is comprised of 3 to 5 layers of keratinocytes. The process of keratinization begins in this layer of the epidermis. Keratinization is where the keratinocytes fill with the keratin protein mentioned earlier. This process continues as the cells move upwards in the epidermis, and as it continues, the cell's nucleus and organelles are eliminated, and the cell dies. The next layer up is the stratum lucidum. This layer is only found in the thick skin in the palms and soles of the feet. The keratinocytes in this layer are clear, flat, closely packed, and have no nucleus or organelles. They are also filled with a protein called ellatin, which is eventually transformed into keratin. The last or top layer is called the stratum corneum. This layer is comprised of dead keratinized cells. It takes about 2 weeks for the new keratinocyte to reach the stratum corneum, and it remains in this layer for about another 2 weeks before it is shed. Now let's look at the dermis. The dermis is comprised of connective tissue proper, with collagen being the most plentiful type of fiber found throughout the dermis. The dermis also houses other structures such as blood vessels, hair follicles, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, which secrete a lubricating oil, sensory nerve endings, nail roots, and erector pili muscles, which affect hair follicles. We will cover these structures in depth in future videos. The dermis has 2 layers, a papillary layer and a reticular layer. The papillary layer is the top superficial layer of the dermis. It is composed of loose connective tissue and forms bumps or projections called dermal papillae that fit with the epidermal ridges of the epidermis. The form of the dermal papillae and epidermal ridges increases the surface area of contact between the 2 layers. The dermal papillae contain capillaries that supply nutrients to the cells of the epidermis, and they contain sensory nerve endings that help monitor touch on the surface of the skin. The reticular layer is composed of dense connective tissue with some elastic fibers and many bundles of collagen fibers, and it extends to the deeper subcutaneous layer. The subcutaneous layer, which again is not part of the skin, is located below or deep to the dermal layer of the skin. This layer is often referred to as the hypodermis, and it consists of loose connective tissue and adipose connective tissue or fat tissue. Many times it is referred to as subcutaneous fat. This layer helps bind the skin to underlying structures, acts as a cushion, protects the body, provides insulation, and provides for energy storage. And that be the basics on the structure of the skin.
It's a lot to get your brain around, hey? Especially being your first day as well. It's like really thrown in the deep side. Okay. Special senses. So we have the 5 senses. We all know the sight, hearing, taste, touch. And then I've got some videos on the senses. Are you getting tired of the videos?
No.
No, you're on? Oh, I need to press the button. Oh, there it is.
hear the gentle lapping of waves, the distant cawing of a seagull, but then an annoying whine interrupts the peace, getting closer and closer and closer until, whack, you dispatch the offending mosquito and calm is restored. How did you detect that noise from afar and target its maker with such precision? The ability to recognize sounds and identify their location is possible thanks to the auditory system. That's comprised of two main parts, the ear and the brain. The ear's task is to convert sound energy into neural signals. The brain's is to receive and process the information those signals contain. To understand how that works, we can follow a sound on its journey into the ear. The source of a sound creates vibrations that travel as waves of pressure through particles in air, liquids, or solids. But our inner ear, called the cochlea, is actually filled with saltwater-like fluids. So the first problem to solve is how to convert those sound waves, wherever they're coming from, into waves in the fluid. The solution is the eardrum, or tympanic membrane, and the tiny bones of the middle ear. Those convert the large movements of the eardrum into pressure waves in the fluid of the cochlea. When sound enters the ear canal, it hits the eardrum and makes it vibrate like the head of a drum. The vibrating eardrum jerks a bone called the hammer, which hits the anvil and moves the third bone called the stapes. Its motion pushes the fluid within the long chambers of the cochlea. Once there, the sound vibrations have finally been converted into vibrations of a fluid, and they travel like a wave from one end of the cochlea to the other. A surface called the basilar membrane runs the length of the cochlea. It's lined with hair cells that have specialized components called stereocilia, which move with the vibrations of the cochlear fluid and the basilar membrane. This movement triggers a signal that travels through the hair cell into the auditory nerve, then onward to the brain, which interprets it as a specific sound. When a sound makes the basilar membrane vibrate, not every hair cell moves, only selected ones, depending on the frequency of the sound. This comes down to some fine engineering. At one end, the basilar membrane is stiff, vibrating only in response to short wavelength, high frequency sounds. The other is more flexible, vibrating only in the presence of longer wavelength, low frequency sounds. So the noises made by the seagull and mosquito vibrate different locations on the basilar membrane, like playing different keys on a piano. But that's not all that's going on. The brain still has another important task to fulfill, identifying where a sound is coming from. For that, it compares the sounds coming into the two ears to locate the source in space. A sound from directly in front of you will reach both your ears at the same time. You'll also hear it at the same intensity in each ear. However, a low-frequency sound coming from one side will reach the near ear microseconds before the far one, and high-frequency sounds will sound more intense to the near ear because they're blocked from the far ear by your head. These strands of information reach special parts of the brainstem that analyze time and intensity differences between your ears. They send the results of their analysis up to the auditory cortex. Now the brain has all the information it needs, the patterns of activity that tell us what the sound is, and information about where it is in space. Not everyone has normal hearing. Hearing loss is the third most common chronic disease in the world. Exposure to loud noises and some drugs can kill hair cells, preventing signals from traveling from the ear to the brain. Diseases like osteosclerosis freeze the tiny bones in the ear so they no longer vibrate. And with tinnitus, the brain does strange things to make us think there's a sound when there isn't one. But when it does work, our hearing is an incredible, elegant system. Our ears enclose a fine-tuned piece of biological machinery that converts the cacophony of vibrations in the air around us into precisely tuned electrical impulses that distinguish claps, taps, sighs, and flies. Dive deeper into the complex world of your senses with this playlist.
It's pretty incredible, actually, isn't it? I just think it's like, you can't help to use words engineering and design, and it's just it just seems so impossible that it just, I don't know, forgive me to say, but that it just happened by chance, because there's so much engineering involved that it just blows my mind. Honestly, that, yeah, pretty incredible. That's why I think the human body is so incredible. Some of the functions inside the body is just, it's a machine. It's a machine. It's incredible. I think our next little video is on this one. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You might have heard that light is painful, and that the color of an object relates to the frequency of light waves it reflects. High frequency light waves are violet, low frequency light waves are red, and in between frequencies is yellow, green, orange, and so on. You might call this idea physical color, because it says that color is a physical property of light itself. It's not dependent on human perception. And while this isn't wrong, it isn't quite the whole story either. For instance, you might have seen this picture before. As you can see, the region where the red and green lights overlap is yellow. When you think about it, this is pretty weird. Because light is a wave, two different frequencies shouldn't interact with each other at all. They should just coexist, like singers singing in harmony. So in this yellow-looking region, two different kinds of light waves are present. One with a red frequency and one with a green frequency. There's no yellow light present at all. So how come this region, where the red and green lights mix, looks yellow to us? To understand this, you have to understand a little bit about biology, in particular about how humans see color. Light perception happens in a paper-thin layer of cells called the retina that covers the back of your eyeball. In the retina, there are two different types of light-detecting cells, rods and cones. The rods are used for seeing in low light conditions, and there's only one kind of those. The cones, however, are a different story. There are three kinds of cone cells that roughly correspond to the colors red, green, and blue. When you see a color, each cone sends its own distinct signal to your brain. For example, suppose that yellow light, that is real yellow light with a yellow frequency, is shining on your eye. You don't have a cone specifically for detecting yellow, but yellow is kind of close to green and also kind of close to red, so both the red and green cones get activated, and each sends a signal to your brain saying so. Of course, there's another way to activate the red cones and the green cones simultaneously, if both red light and green light are present at the same time. The point is, your brain receives the same signal regardless of whether you see light that has the yellow frequency or light that is a mixture of the green and red frequencies. That's why, for light, red plus green equals yellow. And how come you can't detect colors when it's dark? Well, the rod cells in your retina take over in low light conditions. You only have one kind of rod cell, and so there's only one type of signal that can get sent to your brain, light or no light. Having only one kind of light detector doesn't leave any room for seeing color. There are infinitely many different physical colors, but because we only have three kinds of cones, the brain can be tricked into thinking it's seeing any color by carefully adding together the right combination of just three colors, red, green, and blue. This property of human vision is really useful in the real world. For example, TV manufacturing. Instead of having to put infinitely many colors in your TV set to simulate the real world, TV manufacturers only have to put three, red, green, and blue, which is lucky for them, really.
Yes, yeah. So there's a bit of a mixed up there. And each one of these body systems and each one of these senses is really a field of specialty in its own. So the 3-minute videos I show you is really like watered down, simple type of introduction type things. It's not, you know, obviously if a doctor sees this, they might be slightly offended about my simplicity about it, but it's enough for us to understand, because we're not going to go into that as a specialty unless you go and work in a, maybe in a, work for a doctor or a specific, you know, specialist, and you work in a specific area, then you might, you know, want to learn a little bit more. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, at the end, it's the same as when you work in a specific disability, you will learn about that disability on the job. You will train on it, you know, so that's, yeah, so just, it's very simple. It's not like very intense. No, this is the same one. Sorry. That was the same one. Okay, so there is the ear. I have the eye before. Did you want me to stop at the eye as well for you, Gail? Or I think it's in. Yeah, okay. It's in the book anyways. Yeah, what's the, well, we'll go through the page on this in a minute. Yeah. Okay, so our next system we're talking about is the digestive system. Very interesting as well. Cannot think well, love well, sleep well if one has not dined well.
Humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in the human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task, transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half of badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25-centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shaky bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete. TED-Ed is a nonprofit. If you value our work, please consider supporting it on Patreon.com.
40 hours. I wonder if we should go without food for the next 40. Maybe that's the idea. Only eat every 40 hours. Our next system is how are you guys traveling? You all right? Not too tired? Go. I think we should be done in half an hour and then we can have another break. Next one is the urinary system.
The urinary or excretory system is another system by which the body rids itself of unwanted toxins or waste. Basically, the urinary system's main purpose is to maintain the body's homeostasis. In other words, its main function is to maintain the body's acid-base balance. It's important to know the human organism was meant to stay healthy, and systems such as the urinary, digestive, skin, and other vital organ systems were created for that purpose. They are designed to keep the body healthy and able to withstand diseases. But if the load of toxins and or waste is greater than what these systems can handle, guess what happens? You can learn more about this by watching CTE Skills Introduction to the Cell and see how disease is created. In this introductory video on the urinary system, however, we'll just be taking a look at the purpose of the urinary system, the structures that make it up, the functions of each, and how they work together to maintain balance in the body. The urinary system, much like the integumentary system, doesn't have many parts, but they are truly essential to the survival of the human organism. Let's take a look at the basic anatomical structures of the urinary system. They are 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, 1 urethra, and the urethra meatus. Now the 2 kidneys are bean-shaped in appearance. They are located on either side of the vertebral column behind the upper part of the abdominal cavity. The kidneys are protected by the ribs and a heavy cushion of fat called the adipose capsule. They are literally suspended in the body, meaning unattached to any other major organ. They pretty much stay up by themselves. And for this reason, kidney punching in boxing is illegal. Each kidney is divided into 2 main sections, the cortex and the medulla. The cortex is the outer section of the kidney. It contains the majority of nephrons. Nephrons are microscopic filtering units. These filtering units are composed of the following structures: a glomerulus, a Bowman's capsule, a proximal convoluted tubule, and a distal convoluted tubule, and a collecting duct. Together, these structures purify the blood by removing excess water, salt, sugar, metabolic products,
and other substances the body needs to purge in order to maintain the pH acid-base balance and thus the homeostasis of the body. Now the medulla is the intersection of the kidney. It contains most of the collecting tubules, which carry the urine from the nephrons through the kidney to the ureters. The ureters are two muscular tubes, approximately 10 to 12 inches long and extending from the renal pelvis of each kidney to the bladder. Now the bladder is a hollow sac, much like the stomach, lined by a series of folds called rugae. The purpose of these folds is to allow the bladder to expand as urine is collected. The bladder typically holds up to 1 cup of urine, and sometimes more, until the urge to void or urinate is turned on. Leading from the bladder is the urethra tube. Its job is to carry the urine from the bladder to the outside of the body. The last structure in the urinary pathway of purging toxins from the body is the external opening to the urethra. This is called the urethra meatus. Now here's a very important note to make about the urethra and the sexes. In females, the urethra is only about 1.5 inches long, and it is separate from the reproductive system. While in the males, the urethra is approximately 8 inches long, and before the urine exits, it goes through the prostate gland. The urethra in the male is used by 2 body systems, the urinary and the reproductive. Only urine passes through the urethra in the urinary system. But in the reproductive system, only semen passes through. Urine and semen will never pass at the same time through the male's urethra. So what exactly is urine? Urine is the waste product that the urinary system is responsible for eliminating from the body. It's 95% water, and the other 5% is made up of urea, uric acid, creatine, mineral salts, various pigments, and sugar. Excess sugar found in the urine can be indicative of diabetes. In a day's work, the kidney can filter up to 150 quarts of liquid, resulting in about 1.5 to 2 quarts of urine. That's if you're drinking the proper amount of water. Last but not least, each of the kidneys have the adrenal glands attached to the upper portion. These glands have very important functions that will be explained in the endocrine system. Now before we finish, let's go over it one more time. The basic purpose for this system is to cleanse the blood. It filters out toxins such as excess sugars and salts, as well as other substances. The main structures or anatomical parts are 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 1 bladder, 1 urethra, and the urethra meatus. Each kidney is divided into the cortex and medulla. Inside the cortex of both kidneys are thousands of microscopic filtering units called nephrons. And remember, it's important to drink lots of water in order for the kidneys and the urinary system to continue to function properly. Thanks for watching. For more videos on the urinary system, visit cteskills.com.
Okay, so that's the urinary system that we have in the book there. Next one, we're talking about the reproductive systems, both male and female.
If you keenly observe, every kid has characters taken from the parents. Yes, characters from both mom and dad. Have you ever wondered why this happens? Why do we find random characters in the kids which belong to the same parents? In simple language, we can say that it is because of the sexual reproduction in organisms. Yes, although the logical reasoning can be provided by genetics, we will not really get into the details of it. We will restrict ourselves to the major process responsible for this. Now you may wonder as to how sexual reproduction can be responsible for the variations in organisms? For this, we need to stop by the definition of sexual reproduction once again. Do you remember what it was? Let me help you. Sexual reproduction is the type of reproduction which involves fusion of gametes to give rise to new individuals. Now here the term fusion of gametes is the answer to our question. Why is that so? This is because if we say that the zygote is formed with a fusion of gametes, then it means the newly formed individual will have a blend of characters. Thus, in order to learn sexual reproduction, we need to understand the gametes first. Gametes are sex cells and are different in both males and females. Do you know what they're called? Yes, we have come across these terms. The male gamete is called sperm, while the female gamete is called ovum. In order to study them, we first need to take a glance at the reproductive systems. This will give us an idea of how the gametes are produced and help us understand the fertilization process better. So in this video, let us learn about the male reproductive system. To begin with, we take a look at the location where the sperms are exactly produced. These oval-shaped structures on either side are the ones we are referring to. The single structure is called testis, while the pair is called testes, or simply a pair of testicles. Now these are an important part of the system and need to be protected, right? So we have a covering of skin over it. This forms a bag-like structure, and do we have a name for it? Yes, the bag-like structure is called the scrotum. So the scrotum is the pouch which contains the testis. Now the sperms produced will have to travel in order to reach the female body. So who will make sure that the sperms are carried outside the testes? This responsibility is taken up by the mass of coils that we can see here. This is called the epididymis and the pair is called the epididymis. The mass then carries the sperms to this single connecting long coil. This is called the vas deferens. Where will the deferens carry it further? Directly outside the body? No, they will carry it to something called as the ejaculatory ducts. But where does the ejaculatory duct head to? It heads to a destination where the sperms get mixed with a nourishing fluid. Wait a second, what kind of fluid are we referring to? And why is it needed here? Basically, the sperms need nourishment to survive. Also, they need to be protected from acidic conditions coming their way. Hence, various glands come to the rescue by secreting a few important secretions. The first one is the seminal vesicle. It secretes the fluid that helps in nourishing the sperms. Can you see this bulb-like structure here? It is the prostate gland which helps in secreting the prostate fluid. Now the sperms floating in the fluids reach the urethra from where they can be released outside the body. Wait, all the secretions are not yet completed. This C-shaped gland found here gives another important secretion. It is called the Cooper's gland or even the vulvourethral gland. Now with this secretion, the formation of semen is complete. The semen is simply the fluid carrying the sperms. It is carried out by the urethra which runs through the penis. Now these sperms will reach the female reproductive system and only one among all will be able to carry out the fertilization of the ovum. But tell me one thing. Looking at the structure of this single sperm, can you guess whether it is a unicellular or a multicellular structure? It is a single cell. Although the structure may not seem to be that of a single cell, the sperm is definitely unicellular. It bears a head region called the nucleus. Then it has this middle part with the mitochondria for providing energy to swim across. But then who will help in the swimming process physically? That's the business of the tail region. The tail helps in the swimming activity. Now we're done with the basics of the male reproductive system. Let me quickly recap the process we saw above. The sperms are produced by the testes. The mass of coils called the epididymis carries the sperms to the vas deferens which is a long coil. From there, it goes to the ejaculatory duct, where it gets mixed with nourishing fluids. From there, it reaches the urethra. And after the secretion from the Cooper's gland, the formation of semen is complete. So what will we learn before the fertilization process? Of course, the female reproductive system. Do watch our next video to learn more about it. We have taken a look at the reproductive system in males. Now, before moving on to the process of fertilization, we need to understand the place where this process takes place. Yes, I am referring to the female reproductive system. The site of ovum production, fertilization, and the uterus are all a part of the female reproductive system. Let's have a look at this important system in this video. Do you remember where we began studying the male reproductive system? Yes, it was the site of sperm production. Similarly, we will begin learning from the site of production of the egg cell or simply the ovum. So the journey begins from these oval structures called the ovaries, one ovary on either side. Did you notice that the ovaries are connected to these tube-like structures? But they're not connected directly. If we look at it carefully, we find that there are finger-like projections which connect the two. These finger-like projections are very important for receiving the ovum when released from the ovaries. But do they have a scientific name? Yes, these finger-like projections are called the fimbriae. The fimbriae help to hold the ovum released and also help to sweep it to the tubes present ahead. But why does the ovum require the sweeping activity? Can't it travel on its own? No, it can't. Unlike the motile sperm, the ovum is non-motile. It cannot move until it is pushed or swept by some other cells. Now, these tube-like structures that we are referring to since a long time also have a scientific name. They are called as the fallopian tubes. And what do you think will be their importance? Let me guess. Is it that they connect the ovaries to the uterus? Yes, that is definitely one important function. But more important than this is the fact that the fallopian tubes are the site of fertilization. Yes, it is the fallopian tubes where the sperms are able to fertilize the ovum. And from here, the zygote starts dividing and grows into an embryo. Now, where will this embryo go further? Needless to say, the uterus. We know that the uterus, commonly referred to as the womb, is the site of development of a baby. And when the growth of the baby is completed, it comes out of the mother's body through the vagina. Do we know what the vagina is? It is basically a small passage that opens to the exterior. It is the site where sperms are received in the female's body. On the other hand, the same passage is used for passing the baby out of the body during childbirth. Now that you've learned both the reproductive systems, can you tell me which one is more complex than the other one? Just think for a moment. If you think it is the male reproductive system, you may be wrong. Yes, the female reproductive system is more complex. The system is designed for the complete process of fertilization as well as the growth and the development of the baby. That is the reason why it is slightly more complicated compared to the male reproductive system. This was just an overview of how the female reproductive system is. We would get to know how every organ in this system works efficiently when we understand the process of fertilization and the development process of the embryo in detail. For that, you need to watch our next video.
Okay. Are you all traveling? All right? Yeah? You're going at 11:30, so 15 minutes, yeah. We've got 10 more slides left. I don't think they're all videos, but I'll just keep going.
Between you and the rest of the world lies an interface that makes up 16% of your physical weight. This is your skin, the largest organ in your body. Laid out flat, it would cover close to 1.7 square meters of ground. Its purpose may seem obvious, to keep our insides in, but a look beyond the surface reveals that it plays a surprising number of roles in our lives. First, the basics. Skin is the foundation of the integumentary system, which also incorporates your hair, nails, and specialized glands and nerves. Made up of 3 layers, the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, skin's thickness varies from 0.5 millimeters at its thinnest and up to 4 millimeters at its thickest. It also carries out 3 key functions: protecting, regulating, and sensing the world beyond its limits. On a daily basis, its huge surface processes hundreds, if not thousands, of physical sensations. Relying mostly on large, pressure-sensitive skin components called Merkel cells. In your fingertips alone, there are 750 Merkel cells per each square centimeter of skin, coupled with over 2,500 receptors that give you your sense of touch. This surface is also the body's first major line of defense. Without it, you'd be a soggy mass of tissue and fluids, fatally exposed to the elements. Skin effectively seals off your insides and also absorbs pressure and shock with flexible collagen that makes up most of its dermal layer. The epidermis is made up mainly of skin cells called keratinocytes that are completely replaced every 4 weeks. As new cells form at the base of the epidermis, older ones are pushed up. When these cells move upwards, they're filled with a hardened protein called keratin. Once they reach the surface, they form a tightly overlapping waterproof layer that's difficult for invading microbes to breach. Any harmful microbes that make it into the epidermis will encounter Langerhans cells. This group of protective skin cells detects invaders and communicates their presence to resident immune system T cells, which react by launching an immune response. A crucial feature of this immune defense is the several thousand species of microorganisms that inhabit the planes, folds, and crevices of your skin. These microbes, which include bacteria and fungi, thrive in the sebum, an oily substance that's secreted onto the skin's surface by sebaceous glands nestled inside the dermis. These skin microbes keep the immune system in a state of constant surveillance, ensuring that it's ready to react if the body really is at risk. Beyond this protective role, your skin is also a sensory organ that helps regulate your body's temperature, 2 roles that are closely interlinked. Nerves detect whether your skin is warm or cold and communicate that information to your brain. In return, the brain instructs localized blood vessels to either expand if the body is too warm, releasing heat from the blood to the skin, or to constrict if the body is cold, which retains heat. At any given time, up to 25% of the body's blood is circulating through the dermis, making this process extremely efficient. Under warm conditions, the skin's sweat glands will secrete sweat via ducts onto the surface, transferring heat out of the body. Hair can also be stimulated to conserve or release body warmth. The average human has 5 million hair follicles embedded everywhere on the body, except the palms of your hands and soles of your feet. 90 to 150,000 of those are on your scalp, where they help shield the large surface area of your head from physical damage and sunburn. When you're cold, tiny muscles called erector villi cause hair to stand upright across the body. That's the phenomenon known as goosebumps, and it traps body heat close to your skin. Skin's back surface isn't just a shield, it also enables us to interact and connect with the world. Its multifunctional layer cools us down and keeps us warm. The integumentary system may do many things, but it's certainly more than skin deep. Now that we've covered your outer shell, want to get to know your insides a little better? Check out this playlist with some of our favorite things.
Okay, so that's just chapter 1.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I've got that on YouTube. I'll send it through.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have to look at the thing.
No, that's all right. Okay, so just interpreting all this information and, you know, computing it, carrying through it, and keep your body healthy, all the different systems, you know, just work on active exercise, passive exercise, mental exercise, medical checkups, and our diet. Recognizing and promoting ways to support healthy body function, and review factors that contribute to maintaining a healthy body. So, you know, it doesn't stand by themselves. You know, not one of these systems can work without the other system. It all needs each other. It's just like a car. You know, your car's not going to run if, you know, you don't have a battery in it, or if there's no fuel in it. So our body will fail if we don't have all of the systems present and healthy. So we've done a bit of the vital signs. We've done blood pressure, the maintaining body temperature. 37 degrees Celsius is a normal, or you know, if it's anything, if it's 37.1, then you've got a temperature. If it's less than that, that is the ideal, especially now with coronavirus. If you go into the HQ, they take your temperature every time you go to work. So maintaining healthy body temperature, it's when our body has high temperature, obviously when we have an infection and the body's trying to fight the infection, or and maintaining a healthy blood pressure and maintaining a healthy blood sugar levels in your body. So healthy blood sugar is between 4 and 8, or 5 and 9 at the most. If it's anything more than that, then it's, you know, you obviously have got diabetes. If it's anything less than that, it can also be dangerous. You also will feel faint and could fall over. So just again evaluating how the relationship between the different body systems affect and support healthy function, and we will cover a lot of that in our questions. And then with working with elderly people, and especially us being an age group class, we have to consider chronic health issues. I wanted to mention when we were looking at the bladder and the kidneys, that's one of the main things that we would recognize working with older people is if they have a urinary infection. They might have a slight temperature, they might be a little bit more confused than usual. There might be an odor in the urine, there might be a discoloration. It's not necessarily so. Sometimes the urine can be a normal color and they might have a urinary tract infection. There's different types of infections. You can get a kidney infection, which is really, really the worst type of infection when it comes to bladder infections. Otherwise, it's just a urinary tract infection that's just inside the little tracts. That's still, you know, very uncomfortable and certainly puts people really out, especially the elderly. And why it happens is because they don't wipe properly, or they're incontinent, and then, you know, saying that, I'm pretty amazed why little kids don't suffer really much from. Did she? Struggling with urinary infection? Yeah, because I'm very surprised that my granddaughter don't actually get that quite often, because she runs around with the coolie bum, and you know, she doesn't want me to change it sometimes.
And it actually, it wasn't from urine or the poo or anything like that, or from wee. It was from fibers from a nappy.
Oh wow! Yeah,
Oh, wow.
can you? Yeah. So that might be a thing actually with the elderly people, because those stupid nappies. Yeah, I could never imagine those pads they wear. So yeah, but anyways, that would be something we really would, you know, sort of have to consider whenever your client's out of sorts. It would probably be one of the first things you do before you even take their blood pressure. You'll check. You'll do a urine test. I don't know if I've got a video on a urine test. I don't think so. So interconnection between this relationship, the function. Our oxygen goes, you know, through our through our respiratory system mainly, but it affects also cardiovascular, it affects our digestive system and all the other systems. Healthy diet, main system is your digestive system, but also your cardiovascular system. You know, if you don't eat healthy, if you eat too much meat or too much fatty things, it affects your cardiovascular system, our nervous system. Really more than that, but those are the main ones that stands out. So to maintain this homeostasis in our body is our central nervous system, our urinary system, our endocrine system, and our digestive system that, you know, have all the, you know, balancing our pH and things like that. Hydration can go through our integumentary system, mainly our urinary system, central nervous system. All of those are affected by that. Reproduction, endocrine system, reproductive system, special senses, nervous system all plays a role in that. So enhance the quality of work activities by using and sharing information about healthy body function. You know, when you go out there and you work with people, not everyone gives much attention to this. You know, it's one of the subjects that is not touched on as frequently, because I think you need to be, you know, RN to really have an interest in it. I think as AINs, I think we need to have a, you know, because we are the first responders, because we the first ones to notice that something's wrong. If we realize the connections and we realize what the effect of if we don't look at or you know, pick up the signs and symptoms of issues and what the follow-on issues could be if it's not seen to immediately, we don't realize, and then we ignore those signs, and then it leads to something worse. And sometimes we notice it and we pass it on and nothing's done about it, which is the other side of the coin that is real and quite frustrating. So that's the end of my slides. I think we'll have a short break, and then if you guys are up to it, we can still do the questions.